Hello everyone, welcome to the sixth part of ASEAN-Pacific episodes. In this episode, we are going to discuss a very important issue with a special guest. Our topic is the Russian approach to Asia-Pacific. Despite being a part of ASEAN-Pacific both geographically and politically, Russia's foreign policy toward Asia and Pacific region is rarely discussed. Today, we are going to try to shedding light on Russia's foreign policy towards Asia and Pacific region with my expert guest. My guest is Dr. Andrey GUBIN. He's an associate professor at Oriental Studies Institute, Far Eastern Federal University, Vladivostok, Russia. Since 2008, Dr. Andrey is an expert in Asia and Pacific, Indo-Pacific also, regional security issues, international military cooperation, WMD, non-proliferation, local and regional conflicts, and Russian foreign policy toward Asia and Pacific region. Apart from that, an academic and research career, Dr. Andrey worked as an international department officer at the Vladivostok Economic University between 2001 and 2005, advisor for international projects at Sino-Russian Transborder Economic Zone between 2006 and 2008, head of Regional Media Agency 2008-2011, diplomat at the local representative office of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, responsible for the APEC summit agenda between 2011 and 2012. Dr. Andrey also senior research at the Russian Institute for Strategic Studies. Welcome, Andrey. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Lokman. Nice to see you. Good evening and good afternoon and probably good morning for some of our friends.
Thank you very much. Andrey, compared to the other parts of the world, less known about the Russian foreign policy strategies in East Asia and the Pacific. In particular, what is the place of East Asia, especially East Asia and the Pacific in Russian foreign policy strategy?
Well, in terms of geopolitics, Russia seems to be classical continental power, or also it can be called in a Greek manner, teleurocracy. So we have telesocracy, like the power of ocean, and teleurocracy, the power of land. And Russia is purely continental power. And as European countries enjoyed the age of discoveries, and they became, European powers, they became colonial empires because of utilizing world ocean and monopolizing trade. Russia actually expanded its influence deeper to Eurasian continent in all directions. So Asian line of Russian diplomacy can be counted from 16th century, probably from times of Ivan the Terrible, from exploration of Siberia. And also we can notice, we can see to the national emblem of Russia, it's a two-headed eagle. One head is looking to the east, and the second one is looking to the west. So it's also very symbolic. It's speaking on Eurasian character of Russia. And there have been argues for more than 200 years. Is Russia part of Europe, or is Russia Asian country, or Eurasian, or something else? Or probably it has some specific pan-Slavic way of development. And even today, this kind of influence of all of the targets is very big. And also we can see it even on the example of President Putin proclaimed course on establishing Grand Eurasian Partnership as so-called Grand Space from Western Europe to Central Asia to the south, and Asia-Pacific on the east. So Russia is continental Eurasian power. So that is this kind of politics is very diverse.
Andrey, when we compare it to the modern Russia and USSR, what kind of evolution took place in Russian foreign policy attitudes toward Asia and Pacific from the USSR to post-Soviet Russia?
For the Soviet Union, the Asia-Pacific and East Asia was undoubtedly the part of Cold War situation. That was a war arena of the Cold War. But comparing with Europe, in Europe there were none serious military conflicts after the end of World War II, but in Asia there were Korean War and Vietnam War with millions of victims, with millions of casualties and heavy losses. So, but in Asia Pacific there wasn't formed any international security institutions like NATO or Warsaw Pact. So Soviet Union and United States used to reckon on the system of their respective bilateral ties. For the United States is well-known hub and spoke system. For the Soviet Union, that was the Soviet of economic assistance to the socialist states, the states which synthesize a communist way. And also here in Asia Pacific, China played a very specific role during the Cold War. Actually, from the beginning of 1960s until the end of 80s, China was no way allied to the Soviet Union. That was like an enemy, a rival. Thus, Moscow really wasted a huge resources to contain China on its Far Eastern borders. So China was a third pole of the Cold War here in Asia. After collapse of the Soviet Union, Russian Far East actually dismantled almost all the military potential as new democratic Russia, the new restored Russia after collapse of the Soviet Union, actually had no resources for this kind of military confrontation and the complex development of Far Eastern territory, and they actually became lagged. But today, Russian leadership and President Vladimir Putin personally set a task for rapid social economic development of Russian Far East territories to make it more developed, probably mediocre developed if you compare to the European part of Russia. But you know that here in Asia Pacific we witness the enhancing of American activity, military activity here in Asia Pacific, and the United States of their allies, they rise up militarily, even not far from Russian borders. So we also face some new problem and new task to enhance national security and defense here in Russian Far East. So it's, you know, a difference from the Soviet Union of absence of systematic confrontation, but also some similarities we can track. Lokman, shall we react to our questions after or just on our way?
The QA section will be the end of the program.
Oh, great.
Okay. I would like to ask about the Russian pivot to Asia. The Ukraine crisis and the annexation of Crimea are said to be turning point for Russia to Asia and Pacific. Is there really such a link between the Ukraine crisis and the Russian pivot to the Asia Pacific, or did Russia's full focus on the Asia and Pacific in 1980 with Mikhail Gorbachev visit to Beijing?
Well, I think that firstly we should reject the world annexation, because you know that all of these story of 2014. That was a conscious choice of Russian people living in Crimea, who just decided to rejoin to Russia, as they are speaking Russian and they are ethnically Russian. So by historical mistake, they occurred to be in Ukraine. So it's, annexation, that's a Western burden, but that's not true. Well, an international society cannot recognize Crimea juridically to be a part of Russia, but we
Excuse me,
cannot
Andrey,
argue.
yes. Now, I lost your voice. Now it's okay. You can continue.
Okay. Well, international society cannot recognize the Crimea to be a part of Russia, but we cannot doubt that it's a Russian territory. Well, all the mess connected with a crisis in Ukraine and deterioration after that of Russian relationship with the United States and European countries actually affected to Russian diplomacy and probably made it more Eastern oriented. But this kind of pivot to the east of Russian diplomacy actually started not after Crimea, not after crisis in Ukraine, not in 2014. We can remember that Russian Pacific Fleet commemorate the date of establishing from 1731.
Andrey,
So it's a very long story.
I lost your voice again.
Oh, sorry. So we can remember that all of this Asian or Pacific pivot of Russian diplomacy did not start in 2014 after crisis in Ukraine.
Andrey,
Yes,
there is a
Lokman?
problem with your voice.
Yes, and what about now?
Now it's still very weak.
So I'm trying to. Okay. Does it work? Does it work?
Now I can hear, but little bit. The level of voice is very low.
There's some technical issues. So I'm trying to do something. Probably I should, to be closer to the screen, to microphone. So what about now? Is it better?
Okay. Now in comment, I can see there is no audio problem. You can continue. Now it's okay.
Okay.
I
Great.
think the problem in my side. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Well, and also we should remember that the main military outpost of Russia here in Far East, I mean Vladivostok, actually was established in 1860. And also we can remember the Crimean War. Then in 1854, French and English ships really bombed Petropavlovsk on Kamchatka. So the history of Russia here in Far East is pretty long. In the very beginning of 20th century, the Nikolai II, the Russian emperor, he built a Trans-Siberian Railroad from St. Petersburg to Vladivostok. And you remember that after that, Russia actually went to a war with Japan for Manchuria, for Northeast China. And Russia lost this kind of war and lost territories. And you also mentioned Gorbachev's visit to Beijing in May of 1989. Well, I think that was a symbol of the end of the confrontation between Soviet Union and China. But also we should remember that in 1989 in China, there were some very drastic story of Tiananmen massacre and all of these, student riots, and after that, all the relationship of China with Western country and the United States deteriorated rapidly, and probably because of that, Chinese leadership also decided to restore its relationship with Soviet Union in very end of 80s, close to the collapse of the Soviet Union, unfortunately.
Andrey, I would like to ask about the place of East Asia and Pacific in Russian foreign policy. What distinguishes East Asia and Pacific in Russia's foreign policy from Russia's policies elsewhere in the world?
We should see to the Russian concept of the foreign policy, this official document of 2016, and probably next year we'll have a new concept of foreign policy, and there are some priorities written in this document. The number one priority for Russia is CIS countries, Commonwealth of Independent States, so this former Soviet Union space. And after that, the number two priorities is enhancing ties with Eurasian Economic Union countries and CSTO, Collective Security Treaty Organization countries. So it's almost all of them are post-Soviet countries, former republics of the Soviet Union, except that Georgia and Ukraine, they also used to be former republics, and we have some special regime of relationship with them. Unfortunately, we have some issues. As for Baltic states, well, they are NATO states for now, so that's why they're treated not in the same way like other CIS countries. Well, after that, probably number three priorities is relationship with the United States and Europe, with NATO as well. But in the concept of foreign policy of Russian Federation, also there are outlined the importance of cooperation with SCO countries, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and BRICS countries. And you can see that in SCO and in BRICS we have India and China, who are probably next superpowers, and they are undoubtedly global powers, and they are also our strategic partners. So that's it. And also ASEAN countries, that's not a very top priority, but we outline ASEAN as a very important organization, as a very important institution in the concept of Russian foreign policy.
Now, today, we saw in media outlet US prepared to withdraw its troops from Afghanistan. And in Middle East countries, is there a case of turning to Asia for Russia as well?
Afghanistan is extremely important and very complex topic, and it also touches directly issues of peace and security, both in Central and South Asia. So Afghanistan is a hub of security. It's very important. And you know that we hear about withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan for more than 10 years, and they're still there. But also witness the rise in activity of the United States here in Asia-Pacific, and especially this kind of course for establishing so-called free and open Indo-Pacific. So they are trying to construct a new region. And this kind of American politics to construct new region on a space of Asia-Pacific, it's very concerning for Moscow. as Moscow stands on the ground of transparency and non-block policy. Also, that's written as a statements in our official documents, in our foreign policy doctrine, that we welcome and advocate for non-block and transparent security structure in Asia-Pacific.
And Andrey, is the importance of the ASEAN-Pacific for Russian foreign policy is primarily because of its growing strategic partnership with China?
I think so, that we have a treaty on amity and cooperation with China, signed in 2001. Next year, this kind of treaty will be extended for 5 years. Russia and China, we are strategic partners, but we are not military allies. Some experts in the West call it like quasi-alliance or marriage of convenience or whatever. But we are not military allies, actually. We have some military cooperation. They're very intense, very strong military cooperation. Strategic contacts, including early warning system on missile attack, joint drills, even in South China Sea and East China Sea, we conducted joint drills with Chinese fleet. But not all the views we share with China actually on regional security agenda.
In a case of war in ASEAN-Pacific between the US and China, does Russia will take side or will take independent position?
I believe that the best option is no war. So even poor peace is better than a good quarrel. Intensifying of US-China confrontation is concerning Russia very seriously, because China is, adjacent, is a border state, and also because of nuclear weapon possessed by both United States and China. Personally, I believe that both Washington and Beijing, they might be rational, even having all of this, official quarreling, all of these bad wordings, all of this wolf warrior diplomacy and U.S. strong rhetoric. And even the United States called both Russia and China to be a revisionist powers who just want to decapitate and dethrone American supremacy. Well, I believe that even poor peace is better than a good quarrel, than a good war.
I would ask about the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, which was established under the leadership of the United States and mostly aims to contain to China. Does Russia have an idea to joining the Quad Alliance, or if yes, what is the purpose of Russia to join the Quad?
It depends on the character of the Quad, on the character and peculiarity of this kind of dialogue. If Quad will be discussing in equal manner, on equal basis, the problems of all the regional states, and will consequence and harmonize all the stance, all the views of the states, even on military security, even on territorial disputes, that would be very good, and Russia can be ready to this kind of dialogue. And I think that China also would be ready for this kind of dialogue. And we can remember when Chinese representative of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Foreign Affairs Hua Chunying visited India, she also said that China is ready to participate in Quad if Quad would be equal and just for every state and would be transparent. But for today, Quad is looks like a military bloc designed to contain, to deter China's rise. And I very doubt that it can promote security, that vice versa, oppositely, also can only enhance and tighten up the confrontation.
About this, I'm asking about the question about the Sino-Japanese relation. Russia said to be recently strengthened its military position on Kuril Islands with such as missile defense system and jet fighters, anti-ship ballistic missiles and kilo-class submarines. What exactly the significance of Kuril Islands? Is just an ongoing territorial dispute between Japan and Russia, or is it a strategic war shield against the United States in Far East for Russia?
Thank you for this question. It's very, interesting. Japan is rather precious economic and political partner of Russia, but we have this kind of Kuril issue, of territorial issue. Kuril Islands, they just are integral part of Russian territory. It's a border region, and we can enjoy the free access to Pacific Ocean due to possessing Kuril Islands. And Russia understands very clearly that all the military activities of the United States and Japan around Kuril Islands is very high. And considering US-Japan military alliance, that might be a threat for Russia. Thus, Moscow is trying to enhance defensive potential on Kuril Islands territory. And also, we should consider, and we should remember that the word dispute is not very correct, because it means that dispute means that two sides are, arguing whose these islands are. But actually, we face only territorial claims of Japan to Russian territory. And it's also binded with unwillingness and reluctance of Japanese leadership to recognize all the results of the World War II. And that's a very big problem of Japanese relationship with Asian countries, actually, with China, with Korea, with Southeast Asian nations as well. So Kuril Islands is the part of a problem, I think.
Andrey, due to the power competition between the US and China in the coming years, it is predicted that the global power shift and struggle will shift to the Asia and Pacific, and this region will become a new competitive center of the world. In this respect, what kind of military, economic, and social and geopolitical investment does Russia have in Asia and Pacific region?
I'm sure that Russia has no goal to expand or to project power in Asia-Pacific. We have no military ambitions here. All the military tasks are limited to strategic containment, to strategic deterrence of the United States, and protecting Russian borders on the Far East. And that's all. The economic development of Russian Far East is number one priority. And you know that Russian government for more than 10 years have been implementing programs and different projects dedicated to the rapid social economic development of lagged Russian Far East. However, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russian Far East appeared to be systematically low financed. That's why that's catastrophically underdeveloped, actually, considering infrastructure especially. And also we face a lack of population here. They are just fleeing to the western part. Today we have less than 6 million people here on a vast territory of Russian Far East. That is 3 times bigger than the Western Europe, you know. Well, and for today, that's also very hard to speak on attracting foreign partners to the trade, industrial, technological, transport, and investment cooperation with Russia here in Far East. We actually face political problems in COVID situation as well. It affected dramatically, but Russian Far East is very valuable as the gates to Pacific Ocean for everyone, and gates both to Pacific Ocean and to Europe for everyone. But Russian Far East is extremely hard for implementing any project because of very long distance from Moscow and from Western Europe, low population, and underdevelopment of infrastructure. And Russia understands these kind of problems, but still face difficulties to cope with all of these problems. We need international assistance, but actually there is a lack of international assistance because of political reasons, because of COVID, because of some economic reasons as well.
Andrey, in early this year, in March, the foreign minister spokeswoman of Russia, Maria Zakharova, said that Russia will retaliate if the US deploys intermediate range missiles to Asia and Pacific. What are Russia's concerns over the deployment of US intermediate and short range missiles in Asia and Pacific region?
That very sensitive issue for Russia and probably for China as well. The US quit from INF Treaty actually appeared to be very unpleasant for Russia. Even some hints of the United States of American leadership that US Army won't deploy short and intermediate range missiles in Europe, but these kind of missiles should be for China containment. That's not okay for Russia. So we are not happy with this kind of upheaval. Technically, this kind of weapon, I mean, intermediate and short range missiles, can appear everywhere. They are not big, they are mobile. And we can remember the story of appearing of convening this kind of treaty after Able Archer trains, Able Archer drills in Europe of NATO in early 80s. There was an edge of the war in Europe actually because of a short and intermediate range missiles, because it's very profitable and very precise and very low time fly weapon. So it's kind of threshold weapon which can be decisive in a war if you strike first. That's why Soviet Union was extremely anxious on deployment of INF in Europe, and thus in 1986, Soviet Union and the United States decided to limit and even to ban some categories of INF. As for today, considering contemporary development of military technologies, INF are even more dangerous. They have more lethality. And also we should consider Chinese manifestations, Chinese reaction to US quit from INF. Chinese is very, black and white, very straight. If Beijing see the United States quitting from INF, they are doing the same thing. They are just building more and more missiles, more mighty, more precise, more sophisticated. Is it good? I don't think so. It's a very ambivalent and very hazardous situation. All of this dumps United States and China to conflict, and that's not profitable for Russia. Well, even potential deploying of American INF on Guam Island or in Japan will inevitably make Guam and Japan targets for both Chinese and Russian missiles, unfortunately. That's a logic of war. So I think that Americans and their allies should think it over very thoroughly.
Andrey, one question about North Korea. What is the importance and position of denuclearization of North Korea in US-Russian relation? And what is the Russia's weight in the relation between the US and North Korea?
Russia actually solidly stands on the ground of returning North Korea to the NPT, Non-Proliferation Treaty, as non-nuclear possessing state. But that is not an easy task, actually. I think that in Moscow they understand clearly that under contemporary circumstances of rising tensions in Northeast Asia, and then the United States make some strange and claims to North Korea to fulfill this kind of irreversible, verifiable, and total denuclearization just tomorrow. That cannot be completed in a while. So Russia and China actually elaborated jointly roadmap for regulating this kind of North Korean missile and nuclear problem. But United States and probably Japan, they have some disagreements on this kind of Russian and Chinese offers. Washington and Trump, President Trump personally, actually decided to act individually. And I think that this kind of attempt to establish dialogue with North Korea was pretty good. And we can assess it positively, except some strange demands from North Korea to denuclearize just tomorrow. That cannot be completed. But we still do not know the position, the stance of Biden administration to North Korea, because he's Democrat and probably he's not very happy having North Korea with nuclear arms. Surely he's not happy. But I think that Biden knows that North Korea is Chinese ally, and China is very strong pro-Korea oriented, and will support Korean stance. I very doubt that China is really interested in maintaining North Korean nuclear weapon as well, because China is quite rational in this stance. But even minor bonus for Washington is inappropriate for Beijing in Korean issue. Well, and the next probably issue, the next very serious and very sensitive issue is peaceful reunification of the entire Korean nation. Certainly, that's a deal. The Korean a deal a Korean nation should call for and should strive for, and Russia can be a mediator in this peaceful reunification process. But having all of this mess in Northeast Asia, having US-China confrontation, having this kind of American stance of domination, of total domination in Northeast Asia, I don't think that is real. So we will have to live with Korean nuclear problem for next 5 or 10 years more.
And in the Russian relation with ASEAN countries, Southeast Asia, Does Russia accept the Chinese primacy in Southeast Asia, or does Russia accept the role of de facto junior partner by accepting Beijing influence in the region?
Last year, we welcomed the establishment of the largest free trade zone ever in the world. I mean, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, constructed around ASEAN and the big three countries, China, South Korea, and Japan. And actually, it means that the role Asian states, Asian nations would play in world politics and world economics and future and feasible future will be huge, will be rising inevitably. But we should note that trade turnover and investment amount between Russia and ASEAN is close to nil. It's nothing. And also we have some problems with FTA agreements, free trade zone agreements with ASEAN countries. Well, several years ago, we actually signed a treaty with Vietnam on establishing a free trade zone between Vietnam and Eurasian Economic Union countries. But that's not developing because of COVID and because of probably not very good economic situation and some bureaucratic circumstances as well. The trade amount and investment amount between Vietnam and Eurasian economic countries, the economic union countries, that's not much. And actually, we had this kind of process of FTA with Singapore, with New Zealand, but we still have no agreements, and I doubt that we can convene such agreements in feasible future in 2 years or 3 years. But also, it's very interesting that due to COVID situation and due to evergreen crisis in Suez Canal, in the Suez Channel, that the Maersk company, the world #1 transporter, actually organized a container train from Russian seaport named Vostochny, that's near Vladivostok. Cargoes actually from Southeast Asian nations, they went to Vostochny, and then they were dispatched by train to Novorossiysk, to Black Sea, Russian Black Sea, by Trans-Siberian Railroad. And these cargoes were dispatched to Turkey and to some European countries. So it's very interesting route, and it can be developed collaboratively with ASEAN countries, I think, and with European countries as well. As for Russia being some, junior partner or minor partner of China, well, I think that Russia and China possess different strategy. We claim different strategies, and we have different niches economically and politically. We have different potencies here in Asia. You know that for Southeast Asian nations, China is very attractive market, is very profitable investor, but also we can remember this kind of wolf warrior diplomacy of China. They are very, rigid and very tough guys.
My last question would be most update topics about the Russian exercise in the Central Pacific and around Hawaii. Can Russia's recent exercise near Hawaii be evaluated as a retaliate to the US exercise in the Black Sea? And does Russia plan to further expand and perpetuate its such exercise in the future?
Yeah, that's really up-to-date issue. I don't think that there is a very direct connection with Black Sea. We have different strategies for Black Sea, for Mediterranean Sea, and for Pacific Ocean, and different potential and different kind of threats, actually. militarily and politically. But also we should remember the last November incident with McCain destroyer, American destroyer, which actually violated the Pit of the Great Gulf, Russian territorial waters. I think that incident really affected to the decision of Russian military authorities to conduct large-scale naval exercises in central part of Pacific Ocean to demonstrate to the United States some restoration of Russian might in the high seas. And you remember that the last time that the Soviet Navy exercised to hit Pearl Harbor as a major naval base of the United States Pacific Ocean that used to be. That was in 1985 during the Cold War. But as for today, there is in scenario of the up-to-date naval exercises in scenario, there was not any strike to Pearl Harbor, but there was a destroy of U.S. carrier group. So because it's a threat, most obvious, you know that Russian Pacific Fleet has been under modernization, even slowly, but we have some new sophisticated ships, capable ships and submarines, some new weapon, and we are trying to be power again in high seas. As you know, that Russia was no power in high seas after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and we're trying to remember and to restore this kind of experience of our military might in high seas, not just, you know, to go along coastal side as we used to do for 20 years. So Washington and its allies should realize that all the military preparations are very well decoded in Moscow, and there would be reacted inevitably. So I think that this kind of large-scale exercises near Hawaii is not the last one, and we can see even this year we can see some next events in the sea, in the air, in space, probably. So it's from one side it's military rise up, from that one side it's competition, but from the side of Russian national security interests, it's demonstration of power. It's like containment. It's like a signal, don't touch us. So that's it.
Andrey, now we have a few questions. First,
yeah,
I'm going to bring the question on screen. Now, can you see?
Yeah, I see it in comment sections. We have questions from our Indian colleague, Aditya Parveek. Hello.
First,
so about Russian Navy, I think that he has a military background or something like that. So is there a chance of Russian Navy can be based some of assets on Indian Ocean region? I think so, but I don't know where precisely. So we used to have a base on Socotra Island of Yemen in Soviet times. Contemporarily, we actually signed an agreement with Sudan. So it's also African side of Indian Ocean. But as for Asian part of Indian Ocean, it's very hot question. We had some, you know, we had some cooperation with Myanmar, but not on this issue actually. So I don't think that in a feasible future we will have some assets in Indian Ocean, Asian part. In African part, yeah, I think so, close to Persian Gulf. The next question on some threshold cutting-edge systems like Kinjal and Poseidon, unmanned underwater vehicle, and its sales to China or India. Well, I don't think that it can be sold because it's threshold and very sophisticated. But I know that Chinese guys are developing the same. You know, they are masters in copying everything. So I don't think that's a problem for them to create something similar. For India, well, that will be a decision of Indian government. Should they develop some hypersonic missile for planes and some UAV underwater vehicles. Well, the next issue on Japanese ambassador to Russia has said that Japan is very enthusiastic about the prospects of a Northern Sea route and Trans-Siberian Railway in use in conjunction. Yeah, that's it. I think that that's a strategy of a part of Grand Eurasian strategy to offer some transport possibilities to our both European and Asian partners. But it should be studied very thoroughly because Northern Sea route is rather complex. It's not so easy to be utilized. As for Trans-Siberian Railway, it's pretty obsolete in some sections, but it also can be discussed for cooperation, for investment. I think that there's great possibilities, not even for Japan, but everyone is invited, I think. But for Japan, yes, it's very interesting part of cooperation, and I do hope that Suga administration also can be interested in this. Well, transshipment, and you hope for Shinzabe. Yes, I just answered this kind of question. I think that Suga administration will follow Shinzabe politics. I mean, for some economic cooperation and investment cooperation mostly. But I also should to add that Suga administration has pretty different stance on strategic issues, especially concerning their alliance with the United States. So they are becoming, I mean, Japanese, they are becoming very much pro-American oriented. I believe that they might be fearing of China. Well, not Russia, I believe, because Russia is for nothing can be feared. But inevitably, Russia should react because the United States is doing not very good things here in Asia-Pacific concerning Russian national security interests. They, in some cases, they are threatening to Russian security. Well, about Russian yards, are they able to accept orders from India on submarine refitting? I think so. That, but also you can remember this kind of Vikramaditya experience in an Indian carrier that took a very extremely long time to be modernized, to be re-equipped for Indian Navy. So for India, it was a not very good experience. But as India obtains kilo submarines and is interested in refitting, in modernizing, I think it can be done. You know that Vietnam has the same issue. They are also possessing kilo submarines, and Russia is assisting Vietnam to modernize. Besides some, you know, anxiety from China. So I don't think that there's a huge problem. So Russia and India, they are very close military partners, and some project can be proceeded in future, I believe. Well, sorry for being that brief answering questions. Probably we can have some extra. Or Lokman, do you have some other thoughts?
Our question from from Aditya. There is no more question. Thank you very much, Andrey, for joining me today. We reached.
Thank you, Lokman. That was a nice talk.
Thank you. We reach another program of Asia and Pacific episode. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel for next programs in Asia and Pacific region. See you.
Yeah, have a good day.